like a generational difference between our parents and us. They're more like order, where we're like, we want to find ourselves.
I had to make a choice. Do I want to go to prison? Do I want to die? Do I want to make money? Like, who do I want to be in this world?
Strictness probably comes from a place of fear. Like if you're guarding your child because of fear, you're not teaching your child.
Welcome to Just Seen A, the viral content show where we get real and discuss the buzzworthy posts you've just seen online. This is the only comment section you can watch in real time. Let's see what happens.
So I'm going to read a tweet out from Twitter. It says, "The trauma of growing up in an African household is deep." Now, personally, I agree with that because one of the words that I wanted to originally use was like the experience of growing up in an African house was trauma. I said motivational and I said challenging. And the reason why I believe it's traumatic is because a lot of our parents used what I call the rod and the staff. Like if everybody understands what that is, there was a lot more rod than there was staff. And I think when you're a child and things aren't being explained to you, but you're being shouted at, and to the word that you use, Princess, militant, it's like you're trying to understand life, you're also growing, you're trying to learn, you're trying to breathe, you're trying to be, but at the same time you have the only people that are supposed to be like the people you love, the way they're handling you sometimes isn't love.
It's weird that we think that way about the discipline that we had back like in our homes. Most of us find it hard to kind of admit that it was trauma and that was traumatic.
But it had to be the positive.
You don't want to call your parents abusers, but that's what it is.
And it is that.
And weirdly enough, sorry to cut you, my mom, because I have two boys now, and in my head, like he was walking, he's getting into drawers and stuff, and in my head I was like, oh, and I'm like, why would I do that? He's a baby, he doesn't know any better. And I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I just had to stop myself from smacking him. And this is like, I've told my friends about it before.
And your mum's mad relaxing it. I hear this thing where all these parents, they're bare relaxing their grandkids now. There's like different people.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you what she said. She was like, don't you dare put your hands on that boy. And I was like, but you put your hands on me. Right? And she was like, whatever I did in your childhood, I'm sorry. And I was like, and this is a conversation that it plays in my head a lot because I was like, she's apologizing.
That's
like
so nice.
she's validating everything that I felt because I was just like, what are you sorry for? And she was like, anything that I did wrong is what I knew at the time to do for you. So whatever you didn't like that I did for you, don't do it for your kids.
Like my dad had one of those moments with me recently and they've been separated for a really long time. And when he sat me down, he was like, you know, I apologize. I want to apologize to you. Could you forgive me for, and I was like, could you forgive me?
Where did that come from?
He's like, you know,
It's always random. It's
and
always
he used
random.
the words abuse, which kind of threw me off. I was like, where did you learn that from? And he, you know, he's a French speaking man. But he was like, you know, forgive me for abusing you. It was that same thing. I was doing what I thought was the right thing to do. And, you know, I'm sorry it didn't translate in that way. And I said to him in return, I was like, you know what's so weird? When I was younger, looking up at you, it was just this big ball of frustration constantly hovering around the house. Now, I'm like, first of all, with some of the impacts of trauma that he's gone through as a man, I've somehow picked up on it as a woman. And I don't know if you guys have these things with the opposite parent and how much you take from them. But being a black woman in the UK, trying to navigate through the space, going through, you know, racism and all these other things, then I realized I had that anger that he had. And I'm like, oh, you were going through racism and you was going through depression and you was going through these things. Now we're able to look back and be like, I can relate to who you were as this young man. What's helped me kind of process my parents' lives or their trauma was seeing them as outside of mum and dad, and not just kind of seeing Charlotte and Gabriel and be like, oh, you guys are people. You're not even like you're not superhumans. And I know the Bible says stuff like, you know, they're your gods on earth. They're really people. They're really like trying to figure it out as they go along. So when I speak to people, like when I have clients and I'm trying to help them like see past their parents' mistakes, that we love to carry and be like, oh, because of my mum and my dad so I'm now this. And I'm like,
No.
But I feel like after a while, you have to take what they've done to you and have responsibility for yourself to heal.
I always say this thing about, I've got the book now and I've read the book of my mum and dad, how they raised us. So it's up to me now to take that information and to do whatever I'd like with it.
Right.
Do I want to replicate that or do I want to be different?
3 words or less.
Good.
Describe your experience growing up in an African household. It's like medium.
3 words to describe growing up in an African household: challenging, inspiring, and I'll say motivating.
Challenging, motivational. I don't really have a third word, to be honest.
Thought-provoking, beautiful, challenging.
Militant, educational, enjoyment/scared.
Dictatorship, vibrant, challenging.
controlling, order, vibrant as well.
Strict, enriching, insightful.
I chose those 3 words because I had a conversation with my mom and she said to me, like, I was crying, but for like a happy reason. And she's like, and I said to her, I said, I love you. And she's like, I love you too, but you know, I raised you guys like soldiers. And I was like, oh my gosh, finally the validation I needed, because I knew it wasn't like, I wasn't crazy. Like she said, she was like, yeah, I raised you guys like soldiers, but like to be tough in our environments when we leave the house, because in the home, she was loving, you know, like we'd have our moments of her being stricter, even my dad like putting down the wrought iron or whatever, but it was fun. But I would say militant in terms of when you leave this house, you better show everyone who raised you.
I chose thought-provoking, and I also chose challenging. It has always been strict as well, because I mean, wherever you are in an African household, they will tell you what to do and you have to do it. You have to be the way they want you to be. Yeah. I mean, have your personality, but have it in the way I want you to have it. I mean, it's so strange, it's so weird.
For me, I'm the last born out of 4 boys. So I know my mum, like, I was like the golden child. So she was really like, in terms of freedom, for example, all my brothers, I was definitely last in terms of doing certain things. Like they could like bring girls home when they were like 15, 16. Like
What?
When I was at 17, my mum was coming in my room. Like, and I'm thinking, like, why are you coming in my room for if you know I got a guest?
There is that part of trying to adapt to the new environment you're in. I don't know where you guys' stories kind of come from, but I came into the country as a refugee, and growing up with like a refugee mindset, you know, someone's mentioned it to me before, refugee mindset, there's something about having to adapt yourself to this new setting that's in place. And so the head of the family, the dads, or sometimes the mums as well, their job is to make sure that you are following a certain plan or structure that will help them accomplish this goal that they have. Whereas with our goal is to kind of just either blend in or thrive in the environment you're in. So there's 2 different mindsets, like infiltrating it and thriving are 2 different mindsets. So I realized why there's like a generational difference between our parents and us. Then we're like order, where we're like, we want to find ourselves. Just kind of like,
You want to have your childhood.
you want to have your childhood. And it sounds weird, but it's like, we want to be able to just do that. And for them, it's like, we don't have time for all of that figuring it out stuff. So there's a clash in there, but you know, we're all here, so we've done all right.
I think growing up, I didn't understand for a long time, up until maybe age 10 or 11, just how difficult some months were for them. But as I got to adulthood, just seeing how they could just like make stuff happen every month. I have to use the word inspiring, as even though, you know, they may rule with iron fist at different times when you mess up. Just the fact that they've gone to a different city, there's no backup plan. Like, especially my parents, like, they don't have, if something going wrong this month, they have to go and do a second job. Like, they have to make stuff happen. And I think that is quite inspiring, because I don't know if I could just, like, relocate to Colombia or relocate to Thailand and just make it happen. Do you know what I'm saying?
When it was about moving yourself, that's one thing. Like, a lot of us are talking now about relocating. I've been hearing a lot of people talking about relocating. But relocating with kids in the middle of, you know, and it's normally when they were moving, it was because something crazy was happening, like a war or something like that's drastic. So you're not really having time to think. But I think now, in our kind of generation, we have these options of figuring out, do I want to go here? Do I want to do that? Do I want to be this kind of person? And it's quite refreshing. But I think there is also a weird tension between our parents and ourselves because of it, because they kind of see us being free to kind of explore ourselves in ways that they possibly couldn't have before. And it's interesting how that kind of plays out.
Well, for me, I think, just touching on balance, I would say positives and negatives in terms of it was strict, but it was also insightful and enriching, because just looking back at, you know, certain things that I wasn't allowed to do, being older now, I think I understand more as to why it was the way it was. So maybe at the time I didn't necessarily appreciate it, or, you know, I wanted to be, you know, just like my other friends that could do whatever they wanted, and all they had to do is, you know, ask their parents, or not even ask, just pretty much tell their parents, and it was like, it's okay, like, you know. But for me, it would be like, I need to call my mom, then I need to call my dad, then I need to, you know, make sure my mom speaks to my friend's mom, or, you know, all these hoops that you have to jump through. But I think in some way it's protected me and kind of guided me as I've grown up. So I understand more as to why the things happened that way.
Where's everyone from?
Nigeria.
I'm from Nigeria.
Nigeria as well.
Yeah.
South Africa. This is always how it is.
Congolese. We're
Congolese,
infiltrating.
Nigeria. That is true. It is that. I've kind of been raised around. My Nigerian friends' households are way more strict. It's like,
Yeah, I was
it's
just
like,
about to get into that.
yeah, you guys are a
Because I
bit more
think
strict.
everyone missed out one word, which I wanted to say, but I was like, trauma.
Yeah.
I'm not going to skate around it. Yeah, I'm not going to skate. Let me be honest.
You know when you know they're gonna watch this later.
Yeah? Trauma. Okay.
Does a strict upbringing automatically equal a rebellious child? I think there's a few different levels to that question and layers that you can take it in. In one sense, we can just say yes and just be like, everyone's rebellious, but everyone here has had strict parents, and if you were rebellious, we wouldn't even have made it on time to our set. We wouldn't even be here. I think there's what you get exposed to, then there's like the decision you make as a human and how you live your life, and then there's like the consequences of the decisions you make. So there's definitely people who've had it less stricter than me, who've gone on and done like really, you know, idiotic things with their lives, and they're now paying the consequences. And then there's people who've had it more worse than me, who've actually turned it around. So when I think about rebellion, and I think about that word rebellious, it's a choice to stay with a bad attitude for the rest of your life. I had to make a choice at some point around 13, 14 to be like, right, do I want to go to prison? Do I want to die? Do I want to make money? Like, who do I want to be in this world? Because the content I was watching, I don't know if you guys saw this content, but it was there on the internet. Like, you can watch P. Diddy, the Def Jam founder, Russ Simmons. You can watch all these different people hustling and making things happen that look like you when they were like late teens, early 20s. And I was like, wow, like I can make it happen if I put my mind to it. Yeah, I might not have it in my street, but I could see so many stories of different people who came from nothing, making it happen. So I had to make a choice and be like, you know what? I'm not going to be a class clown no more. I'm not going to be rebellious. Like, I'm going to go own up. And not everyone gets a chance to like just smash it, but I'm definitely a product of, if you put hard work in, you will see results.
My mom would say, you can't go over to the sleepover or like the basketball after whatever. So I'd tell her I'm studying at my friend's house.
Oh, that's
So, like, what do you mean?
Everybody
And the thing
was
is,
rebelling.
like, yeah, and the thing is, like, I was the friend people use as the excuse because they knew my mom wasn't on any games. They'd be like, oh, I'm going to Princess's house. We're going to study at Princess's house. We'd be out at the basketball game. Like, you know, so I feel like it depends on what you're rebelling about, one, and two, the level of you know better, but you still want to enjoy. Because I'd go out, but I'd still be home at least by like 8 p.m. Max. and she wouldn't know a thing, but obviously she might now, but you know. But I do think having strict parents definitely makes you either sneaky, lie really well, or maybe you just lie enough to get you out the house or get you to do what you need to do. But I do think later in life you realize I shouldn't have done that, but like, I see why she did what she did.
With strictness, it doesn't give you a space to think outside for yourself. And I think my parents both had to, my dad was more strict, mum was more so touch it and if you die, you die kind of thing. And both of those kind of mindsets kind of balanced me out really well, because I did what I did because I was supposed to, but then it made me question everything 10 times more, because it's like, I know I'm supposed to do it, but it doesn't make sense. And that strict route that I took is the reason why I'm a feminist today. It's the reason why I'm no longer a Christian today. It stepped me out of so many structures, because I was realizing that with the constraint around me, there was a need to break out. And that was a part of me finding myself. So you can put people in strict environments. It's just going to rough them up more to have to break out anyway.
It's about education. I think one thing that lacks with the idea of strictness is strictness probably comes from a place of fear. Like if you're guarding your child because of fear, you're not teaching your child, and ultimately anything is going to happen. But if you educate your child as to why you shouldn't touch this stove, and if you touch this stove, this is what happens, not out of fear, but true education, I think more children would actually listen.
One thing I won't forget about living in an African household, I would say just the camaraderie with my sister as a result of us always having to have each other's backs. And I think that comes with, you know, the struggles and the challenges that you face dealing with African parents already, because as we've been talking about how strict everyone was and how traumatic things were or could be, I would say, just the camaraderie and having an older sister that I could, I think, learn from, see where she made decisions that that impacted, you know, the relationship within the household and how I could be better or sneakier. So then again, the rebelliousness comes in, the lies come in. Yes, mom and dad, I've lied to you before about a couple of things, but I'm still fine, you know. So I think it's the camaraderie and navigating your way,
So do I appreciate the sacrifices my parents have made? And one thing that I wish they did different. One, I do appreciate the sacrifice, because living in Nigeria and then living in the UK and also being born in Germany, like just seeing the different, like in all those different countries, I think it made me, I just had way better advantages. One thing I would change was the fear. I didn't like the fear. There was no point of us moving if we was gonna do everything in fear. The whole point was for us to have a better life. The whole point was for hope. The whole point was for change. But, you know, I think growing up now, I understand why there was fear, but I personally believe that, like, I would have been way more empowered and gotten way further if my mother just believed in herself more.
I appreciate the sacrifice 100%. I don't think I could do it. I'll be honest, I don't think I could migrate to another country, like, especially in the time they done it. They came with nothing, and from nothing to something. So I do appreciate the sacrifice, like I said. But if I could change one thing, it would be for my parents to place more significance on us being creative rather than just following what regular people do, like going to school and going to university and doing this and doing that and showing you everything by order. I feel like if my parents placed more significance on us being creative, there's so many things that I'm doing now that I would have been doing from way before, and I would have been so much better at it.
I think one thing I would change growing up in an African household would be the comparison. I mean, when you have more than one child and you see one flourishing, you would expect the other one to follow in that footstep and also flourish. I mean, I didn't grow up in a household where they were saying, oh, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. I mean, that's you do what you want to do, but I want to make sure that you succeed the way your brother succeeded. I want to make sure that you're making the kind of money your older siblings are making. I want to make sure that you're doing good for yourself. I mean, it's from a place of good, but you just feel like when you're not at that point, you feel like you aren't doing what they expect you to do. You feel like you're disappointing them. You feel like you're not making yourself where exactly they want you to be. And that's not true. I feel like at whatever point you are in your life, as you're glowing, as you're flourishing, even if you're not at that point yet, you'll get there. But in an African household, they don't want to wait for you to get there. They just feel like, nah, I want you to be like that, like yesterday.
I wish my parents didn't make the sacrifices they made. Because I'm starting to realize that I wish you guys put yourselves first so that you could feel fulfilled within your life. Because some of the sacrifices you made were things that didn't need to be such a sacrifice. So it's like, as much as I appreciate it, I also understand why it shouldn't be repeated, and that I need to focus on making sure for myself as a young woman or as an adult that I'm able to fulfill for myself, and that my children are not my sense of my source of joy. Like, let me be okay so that you don't have to make me okay. Oh yeah, do your grades properly so I'm happier. Or I need to be fulfilled in myself so that my children can have their space to grow in themselves. That's kind of how I see it.
What I do wish that my parents did different was split earlier. I think it would have saved a lot of us seeing them argue and thinking this is love or this is what a relationship is supposed to be like. And I think it would have saved us a lot of mixed feelings of just confusion in life and like what is conflict resolution, words of affirmation, because they weren't speaking nice to each other. Me and my brothers weren't speaking nice to each other. And I feel like obviously as immigrants and stuff, like it heightens more because we're all the only people that we have. And they came here together, so we're not trying to split up. Like, we only have each other. So I feel like if they would have taken that step to put themselves first, like you said, I think we would have been a lot better along the way. And there's a lot of things that I wouldn't have had to unlearn because of them staying together. So yeah, other than that, even the whoopings and all that, like, I'm fine. And I think it's like, I won't do it to my children. And I definitely feel like it's not conducive to like the household and how children are supposed to be raised. Everything that they did has led me here today. So I wouldn't change anything. So yeah.
Big up our parents. I love you, Mum.